Welcome to FedScoop TV. I'm Wyatt Cash, and we're here at Dell's Digital Transformation Summit. And joining us today is Lauren Knausenberger. Lauren is the Director for Digital Innovation at the U.S. Air Force. Welcome to the program.
Thank you. Glad to be here.
Great. First, let me ask, there's a lot of discussion around digital transformation, but what do you think digital transformation in government and maybe for the Air Force actually looks like in 2017?
So hopefully we make some good progress in 2017, but on our way to making that progress, there are a couple of things that I think about just in terms of foundational framework. First, laying the foundation, things like moving toward enterprise IT as a service. This is something that the Air Force is investing in heavily right now, looking at what are the service offerings and operating more like a business in that way. Because for too long, I think many places in government, you're kind of duct taping the infrastructure each year, trying to keep legacy systems in play, really at the peril of spending those dollars toward new things. And then along those lines, moving toward cloud. Because as soon as we have that foundation of a solid, reliable IT infrastructure, and we have an environment where you can rapidly increase capability, that paves the way for a lot of things. So once the foundation is laid, we then look at the data strategy. And the Air Force has hired a chief data officer to really look at what are the key questions that we need to answer based on our data. How can we use our data to solve problems that we maybe couldn't even articulate at this point? Looking at things even that have already been learned in private industry. Predictive air maintenance, looking at kind of based on the previous patterns of how things have broken on an airplane, getting ahead on things like inventory. So there are some very practical applications for looking at data, looking at people. Why are people leaving the Air Force? What are the things that are most compelling to bringing in the next range of cyber warriors, software developers? And then once we have the data piece in place, there's also a growing understanding that perhaps we, instead of kind of bringing together data in stovepipes and kind of connecting stovepipe systems, that perhaps we're not that unique after all, that the private industry has solved a lot of the problems with personnel and logistics. And so we're ready to adopt SaaS applications wholeheartedly, which is good. I mean, we don't have to, I guess one of the advantages to being a late player to the game is that a lot of the nuts already been cracked. So at this point, you can adopt the software with the processes in place because not only has the software been proven at most of the Fortune 500, but those processes have worked, including some of the top talent recruiters and retainers in the industry. And then really from there it becomes a policy issue. I mentioned earlier in the panel that it's very difficult sometimes to tell where the true roadblock is. You kind of go down a rabbit hole, finding one after another. So as much as we can be more proactive than we have in the future to get ahead of the policy barriers that are coming, then we will avoid this problem of innovating quickly into a brick wall that currently happens. That's kind of the tension between pushing toward innovation, but then pushing back with acquisition processes and cybersecurity practices that sometimes, frankly, don't actually help us be more secure.
Well, speaking of innovation, what's one area that you kind of can envision all this technology could help revolutionize the way the Air Force or maybe government more broadly actually does business?
So there is an amazing convergence of technology coming. And I mean, you look at things, we have quantum computing, artificial intelligence, and machine learning. We have the ability to have bots replace or compete with human cyber red teams. So, I mean, there are amazing things happening in those areas, as well as some of the first really true new innovations in space since the 1960s. So all of these things are happening at once. When you start to use 5G and sensors and artificial intelligence, it's not going to be long before you can say, how many guys are standing at the corner of 7th and Madison wearing red shirts. This is coming. So that's going to be the baseline in the commercial world for marketing purposes. We're going to be able to see this level of information. So the intelligence value added within military and DoD applications then changes. You don't need to be the FBI to see someone on the street corner. I mean, that's also a little scary for privacy considerations.
Yes.
But the government is still looking at how do we get out of these stovepipe systems and adopt something that many people have already adopted. Whereas I think within 5 years in Asia, we're going to be looking at not is it mobile or is it desktop, but is there a screen at all? I think our government's going to take a little longer to get there. But a lot of it really comes down to effectively laying that foundation. We innovate well in pockets within DoD. The military warfighter capabilities that are developed are absolutely incredible. I understand why we can say as a country that we have the top force in the world. When it comes to business transformation, we cannot make that claim. And unfortunately, it sucks a lot of oxygen out of the room when you can't pay people on time or retain people through a career path. And that's something that the government takes very seriously and tries to do a wonderful job with. But it's a hard problem. You have a workforce. It's almost like a Fortune 5 company that's working on spreadsheets and email. Until you solve that problem. I mean, imagine Amazon or FedEx working with that tool set. So the good news is the government realizes this is a crisis and is investing quickly and is quickly coming to that level of technical vision that is needed to succeed. I think a lot of times we talk about acquisition reform and security and policy roadblocks, but honestly, people have been coming up with their technical visioning in this tiny box for so long that a lot of times you take away the box and the technical vision is still not there. So if we can return to the foundation and really sell a compelling technical vision and just come up with some basic proof, do a competition. I actually would love to do a competition to see once and for all if I have a website that's going through the DISA cap versus a commercial solution, which one is more secure?
Interesting.
I would love to really just start proving things in as best of an experimental environment as we can. But I truly think that those are the things that are going to change thinking. And that if we can get that foundation laid now, that once we get through some of these initial roadblocks, that we will be back on a path of high trajectory and trajectory that continues rather than smashing into policy barriers.
Well, great. And lastly, and just briefly, I know the airmen and warfighters are the first customer group, really, for all that you're doing. But how important is it for a government to rethink the way they interact with sort of the larger universe of constituents so that they can provide services that are really on par with what we expect with the private sector? You mentioned Amazon, for example. What has to change?
So it's an interesting question. And when I think of the Air Force, or the DoD, I don't think external constituency as much. Definitely taking care of the airmen is a priority, but there's a growing understanding that there are many crucial partnerships. And you'll hear everybody in government talk about the need for public-private partnerships and for really even individuals like those with the Defense Innovation Board that are bringing just amazing intellectual firepower to DoD problems. So I think recognizing that it has historically been very difficult for the best companies to do business with DoD, that a lot of companies really won't do it directly. They go through a pass-through. They don't, for a lot of different reasons, they go through a pass-through. So I think if we can change the business environment, that will go a long way. But I think it also takes some learning from the business community and from the traditional industrial base to kind of get out of the mode of competing with each other toward wanting to solve all government problems and more focusing on where are you the most strong? Where can you say that you do something better than everyone else? And then bringing people together, not in a work share war, but to genuinely try to solve a problem collaboratively. Just multi-company coalitions, brain trusts. Really, frankly, more people jumping into government for a period of time. And the Defense Digital Service, that's their model. And really, I mean, that's also the model for me within the Air Force. I'm intended to be there for 3 to 5 years. And, that's the plan. Get in and do what I can in 3 to 5 years and then jump back out to entrepreneurial and investment pursuits.
Well, it sounds like you're the example of one of the ways to change that. So I appreciate that.
It could be. And what's very interesting is, so people know my background around the building. And it's becoming more and more that just being in the room, people automatically think differently.
Interesting.
And one of the generals that I work with, has said a few times, it's really interesting to see the world through your eyes, and I'm trying to do that more. And I think in general within the Air Force, everyone is trying to do that more.
Well, Lauren, I appreciate your stopping by and
Right,
sharing your
absolutely.
story with us, and thank you for also giving us some insights on what's happening at the U.S. Air Force. So good luck with
certainly. Well, thank you so much.
Sure. Look for more of our digital transformation coverage at fedscoop.com. I'm Wyatt Cash. Thanks for watching.